Time to update a really fun farm system. It is the Detroit Tigers' turn here as we continue to either put out new top prospect lists or update the top prospect list. Some of them I think are almost more geared towards a new list if you had a ton of graduations. This one I think would file under the update because we still have so many of the players that were in the end of 2024 season, top 100 update, midseason update that just didn't quite graduate at the big league level. So a lot of fun names to talk about, but also a lot of movement in this Tiger system. Of course, this is a call up. I'm Aram. He's Jack. And normally we're going to just talk about the movers and not do the full hour 20 shebang on a system that maybe we talked about a few months prior. But this system, we're not going to do the full hour 20 shebang, but we're going to talk about all of these players kind of quickly because there are a couple draft picks that made the top 15. There also are some movers with some guys who maybe didn't perform as well, some guys who did, big league debuts that I kind of want to catch up on. So there's just a lot of fun narratives within this system that I'm excited to talk about, and I know you are too.
It feels like there's a story about every guy within the top 15 and even some names to watch. Like it feels like there were guys that either solidified their prospect status, got to the show, were good. Unfortunately, Brant Herter graduates because I think Herter would be like number 3. I think I would probably put him between Clark and McGonigle because he was so good. I'm kidding. But like there were guys that got there were a big piece to what the Tigers did down the stretch. Like I'm thinking about a Jace Jung and a Trey Sweeney and guys like that. You know, Ty Madden was in that bullpen, was one of those long men. Jackson Jobe is in the bullpen. How much did that actually alter their prospect caliber? Not much, maybe a little bit, some a little bit more than others. It's an interesting story with every single guy.
Absolutely. And Herter, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, did graduate by our standards. 45 innings in the show, man. And this is why we graduate, guys. Where Herter would have been valued before the call up and then where he is now valued by, outlets is enough for me to just say he's a big leaguer. Like, let's go into next year and just count him as a big leaguer, see how it goes, because you're taking more from his 45 inning big league sample than you're going to anything he's done as a prospect. To me, that means he's not a prospect. And that's why we didn't rank him. But if we were, for the sake of the exercise, definitely in the top 10 off of what he did. But again, it's almost unfair to the other prospects because you're comparing a guy that had a huge big league sample size that now weighs more than the minor league stuff that he had done, though he was great in the minors as well, which is worth noting. But of course, there was the question of, is that stuff going to play at the big league level? Well, with guys like him, there's only one way to find out. And I think 45 innings, we kind of found out that it should play. Maybe not at that caliber, but it will play.
Well, it's crazy because like with 29 other organizations, I'm sure there are some at the bottom of the barrel that we give these guys opportunities anyway. But, say if he's in 15 other organizations or if Ty Madden is in 15 other organizations or Kaida Montero is not throwing 100 innings in the big leagues this year with where he was at in AAA. Ty Madden was not performing in AAA. He wouldn't be getting to the big leagues with 15 other organizations. But the Tigers were a set of really unique circumstances. They saw a bunch of guys get a big league shot, no matter how short or how long. And I feel like you learned a lot from those. And, like some of the guys that we're going to talk about had an 100 plate appearance sample or had, 15, 20 inning sample. And you learned something just a little bit.
Absolutely. We'll hop into the names to watch. And as always, linked in the episode description is a new article. All of these are going to be new articles, even the updates, because it just makes it a little bit easier. And you can keep up with if you go to justbaseball.com, by the way, go to the prospects vertical, go to team top prospect lists. It'll have the date of the most recent published list for each individual team, and they'll all be hyperlinked there. So then you can also see who is on the way as well. But click along in the episode description, or if you're on YouTube, you can just follow along with us visually. Jack will walk us through the names to watch.
Yeah, a couple of guys that remain there. Paul Wilson was 15 the last time, but now he's a name to watch. He dropped out of the top 15. He comes with pedigree. His dad was, big leaguer for parts of 8 seasons, 19 years old. Mechanics are really good. Like when you watch the video, you say, how can this guy walk 36 and 35 and a third? That's how he dropped out of the top 15. Yeah. He walked 36 and opponents hit 310 against him. It was a really bad showing to open his pro career.
Yeah, that's just unfortunately it. And it doesn't mean, sound the alarms, he's cooked, but it does mean that if some new guys were drafted and some other guys performed, they're going to grab that spot in the top 15. So yeah, slight drop for Paul Wilson here. Still intriguing, still just 19 years old, but it was a rough, I would say, pro debut at the complex.
Yeah, Carson Rucker's a weird one. Rucker was, I want to say, the fourth high school guy taken in that first Scott Harris draft. It went Clark 3, McGonigle 37. Then they went with a college player, and then it was Paul Wilson and Carson Rucker. Max Anderson was the college player out of the University of Nebraska. But Rucker, he's only played 13 games of pro ball. He played 9 games after being drafted in 23, and then injuries limited him to 4 games this past year. There's just nothing to assess with Carson Rucker, but he came with a decent price tag to sign him away from a college commitment. Josh Randall is an interesting name, though. Right-hander was not great as a reliever at the University of Arizona for 2 years. Transferred to the University of San Diego, started games, and had this sinker-slider combo that made him look like an early-round pick. And he was an early-round pick, third-round pick in 2024. He's 6'4", 240. There's really no third pitch right now, but he does feel like that back of the rotation, chew up 110 innings with a sinker-slider combination.
Yeah, 6'4", 250 is I think what he's listed at. Like, he's a big guy. I'm definitely interested to see if he can just kind of be that innings eater. He spun a lot of ground balls at the college level last year. We saw him make a brief pro cameo in low A, and he looked the part there. So definitely a name I'm excited to watch going into next year.
Yep. Frenier Montilla, don't have much here. Big money, $500,000 IFA guy. He was not good in the DSL in 2022. He was better in the DSL in 23. He came stateside. He was good at the complex in terms of offensive results. And then he goes to low A Lakeland, and he was 6 for 63 to end this season. But he can play second, short, and third. He splits his time relatively evenly.
Yeah, I saw him show some signs of life, actually. I got a live look at the end of the year. I was there for JJ Weatherholt, for full disclosure. But he definitely looked like, when you're at those low A games, man, like, I know you can speak to it. It's a lot easier for a guy to stick out. It's obviously a level higher than college, but where you can see the guys that are going to be able to play at the upper minor league level and maybe get a shot at the big league level. And then you can see the guys that might be maxed out at the low A level. So when a guy like Frenier Montilla like puts a good swing on a ball, and you see that and you say, okay, that guy's a little bit different than these other guys. He put a couple swings on balls when I was there. I was like, okay, that guy's a little bit different. And then it wasn't a total surprise to me, when I remembered, okay, yeah, this is a little bit more of a expensive international free agent. That said, I've also been to Lakeland games where, I'm watching Christian Santana, and it's like he doesn't look like the multi-million-dollar international free agent as well. So like it can go both ways. But I think this is a guy that finished the year strong. In that Palm Beach series, he had 7 hits alone. Switch hitter that definitely plays the game with some moxie and some energy, and I definitely think fits the bill of name to watch at 19 years old.
Yeah. Joseph Montalvo is a very interesting candidate and a really interesting backstory. He was 20th round pick of the Rangers in 2021. He came over at the 24 deadline in the Andrew Chafin deal. 22 years old. He was a shortstop in prep ball. He was a shortstop growing up in Puerto Rico. Then he got into pro ball, pitching full time. This guy has thrown 196 innings in his pro career. 2.84 ERA, opponents hitting under 220 against him. It's low 90s, but what I read, it plays well top of the zone. Like it's one of those low 90s with carry and a decent slider along with it. It feels like a guy that is athletic and somehow more advanced than you would expect. And that's why he's been so good at the lower levels of the minor leagues.
So trend in this system, because now it's, Scott Harris has had some time now to Scott Harris this system.
Yeah.
The carry, and he's not a guy compared to some of the others that we're going to talk about, but he does get good carry relative to the release height. It's 5'5" release height, 16 inches of vert. So, that's above average vert comfortably for that release height bucket. But everybody likes IVB. Like, don't get me wrong, but Scott Harris is like all in, and he doesn't care if you're a 6'6" release or a 5'6" release. If you're above average vert relative to the release height, he's going to go and get you. And that's definitely a trend I've seen here. But the pitch with Montalvo is the slider. The fact that the fastball is good, characteristics wise is great because it sits 92. but the slider is wipeout. Opponents hit 130 against it last year. So you think it could either be this swingman, depth starter type of situation, or you wonder if, he gets moved into 1-2 inning spurts. If that fastball ticks up to 94 with the characteristics and a nasty slider that he leans on heavily, maybe that works in, a lower leverage relief. I definitely think that he has a chance to be a big league arm here, though.
Yeah. Another guy that should be a big league arm at some point pretty soon, honestly, is Michael Massey. And I think that comes from a move to the bullpen. Massey was a name that I know a lot of people really liked at the end of the 23 college season because you had Rhett Lauder and Sean Sullivan and Josh Hartle that were the starters at Wake Forest, and Massey was kind of that bullpen Swiss Army knife guy that they would go to. They tried moving him to the rotation this past year at Wake Forest in 2024. Bunch of injuries, like hammy, back. He walked 24 guys in 34 innings. That wasn't Michael Massey whatsoever, but the Tigers bought relatively low. They took him in, the third round this past year, the fourth round this past year? Yeah, fourth round this past year. So, I mean, he's a guy that probably makes the move to the bullpen, but he clearly has some stuff to him.
He averages 19.6 inches of vert this past year. Like it's just another vert machine. It's wild how that's been like a huge focus in this system. It's palpable. So you imagine you move him to the pen, and the release height's high. So again, some teams will kind of there's teams philosophically that even if it's a ton of vert and even if it's plus vert relative to the release height, if it's a 6'4" release height, they don't like it as much. Yeah. Clearly, that has not pushed Scott Harris away from these types of arms at all. And that's exactly what Michael Massey is, about a 6'4" release height, but he gets plenty of vert. And it's kind of cut ride because he doesn't get any horizontal either. Slider is nasty off of that. This could be, absolutely another bullpen arm that you push quickly.
Yeah. Lower level catcher, Enrique Jimenez. He's been on these lists for a little bit now because he was, decently priced IFA guy in 2023. He got, catcher, first base, hybrid. He was really good at the DSL in 2023. In 24, he was fine at the complex. I feel like 25 is the big one to see who he is as a prospect when he gets to low A and we see, him face a 24-year-old arm.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't have much to add on that. I think you got it. And contact rates are below average, but the chase rates are solid, keeps them low, but puts the ball on the ground a little too much.
This guy only has 20 innings in the big league, so he is still somebody with prospect status because he's only pitched 1 year in Major League Baseball, and it was 20 innings. But Sawyer Gipson Long, Tommy John surgery, wiped out 24. We'll see what happens in 2025 with him, but he's proven to be a big league caliber arm, so he's a name to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think he can be a back end of the rotation starter potentially. I mean, this is a dude that he punched out 11 Angels one game in 2023, and I thought turned out a lot of good starts. I like the characteristics. I like the pitch mix. Assuming the 2 injuries that he's had that have kept him out here, don't affect him too much when he comes back. We'll have to wait and see. But I mean, I definitely think this is one of the more underrated arms in the system.
Here's a name that you won't find anywhere. Jose Dixon in the Dominican Summer League just turned 18 years old. He's 6'2", 158. So you think that he can put a little bit more meat on his bones. He walked 15% of the time. He K'd 16% of the time. Had a 122 WRC plus in the DSL. Stole 18 bags in 44 games. He didn't hit any homers. You assume that he'll hit some homers when he gets over 175 pounds or something. He's 158 right now. This seems like, and he was the third heftiest price tag in this past IFA class for the Tigers. You think this is probably the name to watch from that IFA class.
Just a fun project off of the measurables alone at just turning 18 years old. I haven't heard anything about him, so I'm excited to just see what that frame looks like potentially and see what he can grow into.
Blake Dickerson, interesting draft story. Dickerson, a lefty taken by San Diego, signed for $500,000 to pull him away from a Virginia Tech commitment. He was taken in the 2023 draft. In February of 24, the Tigers acquired him for $500,000. So they essentially said, wait, we want him, we'll pay his bonus. And the Padres are like, okay, cool. 15 hits allowed in 24 and a third this year, but he walked 16. He's 6'6", and his arms never end.
Yeah, which is the interesting part. the other side is he averaged 87 miles per hour on the fastball.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, we'll see how this all comes together. But nobody hit him. Yeah, they had a $162 against him. It's just if it's in the zone or not. Definitely just a fun project.
Max Anderson is the last name to watch, and Anderson we've talked about. I wonder what it's gonna look like if he gets to the big leagues. Like it feels like a poor man's Justin Foscue, I guess. Maybe a little bit more power, a little bit more whiff. I'm not sure what this is.
Yeah, and my concern if the one side is he doesn't really pull the ball much in the air. Most of the damage that he's doing is kind of inside out swinging the other way. But if you look at the strikeout rate, really low, seems to grind out ABs and things like that. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what it all looks like at the highest level as well. But he's held his own at every stop, and we'll see how he adjusts to Double-A. Could be just a solid bench piece potentially.
Yeah, maybe.
So we'll jump into the top 15, which starts with a guy that was recently added to the 40-man roster here. It's Tyler Mattison. I'm really, and this is actually why I'm wearing my Newport Gulls hat today.
Nice.
My first gig ever, like kind of broadcasting, was in the NECBL. Tyler Mattison was easily the best arm on that ball club, and so that was the first time I got to really see him. He was playing at Bryant at that time, so I always just kind of followed along. And I'll be honest with you, though, I would have never foreseen this outcome. I saw him as a big-bodied at the time, pitchability, not a totally pitchability, but at least like pitch mix, eat innings, fill up the zone a little bit more than you'd expect. And that's at least what he was doing in the NECBL. But now he's a totally different archetype, and I love it. It's funky as hell. He was not this funky before either. A really unique release that, the glove flies at you, the arm, like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like most guys, like it's a deeper, motion behind them. It's almost like you see his arm the whole time, but you still can't really see the ball. He releases it high, but generates a crazy amount of vert. He averages like 2,700, almost 2,700 RPM on his fastball. How is that even possible? Gets 20 plus inches of vert, again, high release, but when you have that much spin and the vert as well, and it's 95 miles per hour, like that is a fastball that could border on plus. That's why even despite the fact that he was out for the entirety of the 2024 season with Tommy John surgery, the Tigers said, we got to add this guy to the 40-man roster because somebody will snatch him up and try to plug him in the bullpen. He should be ready early this year. That fastball alone is going to be able to dominate, but then also changeup that is flashed above average and also has a ton of separation. I think 18 inches of total separation from that fastball, and then a curveball that he mixes in as well. I think this is another Tigers bullpen success story that we're going to see here, and a guy that could help them as soon as this year.
I have no idea how to describe the delivery because it's like his glove hand somehow like flies around, yet he doesn't use it. You feel like it could contribute to, like the torque within his torso and his hips, but it doesn't. Like it feels like he's almost facing you with his chest before he even delivers the pitch. It doesn't make any sense. So the fact that he can get it to the mid 90s like that, when it feels like anatomically it's supposed to be like an 85 mile an hour fastball, is crazy. And that probably adds to the funk. I'm totally with you.
The hitters just look totally uncomfortable. And then when you got to worry about, it's spinning at 2,700 RPM, what are you going to do with that? So I think he could be that flip the glove up guy and get you, but with a little bit more refinement, I think he could develop into a high leverage arm. And that's why he gets the 15 spot here in these top prospect rankings. 14 is a guy that, if he's going to do it, probably going to stick as a starter. And that's what you want to see. This is a player that I feel like a lot of outlets have kind of gone all over the place on. I've seen him on the top 100 list and then immediately removed from the top 100 list and then dropped towards the bottom of the Tigers top 10. I've always struggled to see it in terms of like try to envision what it will finally look like. And I'm still trying to figure that out. The clear thing here is this is another bizarre arm action. And if he was a reliever, I could tolerate it a little bit more. If we're talking about Tyler Mattison as a starter, I'd be kind of concerned about that delivery. Jaden Hamm is a low 90s guy that gets a ton of vert, but it's also high release. That's fine because it's still well above average vert relative to the release height. Yeah. But it's a really long arm swing backwards. He legitimately his shoulders are angled to the degree where it looks like he's going to try to fire it over the back net at home, but he gets himself kind of keeled back over and is able to fill up the zone enough with the fastball. The thing is I think it affects the other secondaries more. Like when he needs to spin something or when he needs to throw a changeup, I think that long arm swing back, like he starts on the third base side of the rubber, and then his arm goes so far back and behind him that I paused it. And his hand, like the ball in his hand, was beyond the first base side of the rubber. So think about that. You're set up all the way on the third base side of the rubber, and your arm is so far behind you that you're beyond the first base side of the rubber. That's really hard to sync up. And I think it does result in a lot of effort. And we talked about those long arm swing guys like a Frank Mazzucato and Anthony Solomito. And it's a little bit different because he's more over the top. But I do think that it creates some velocity variance, and we saw Hamm's velocity slide a little bit at the end of the year. And, I think the efficiency too, where at first I'm like, oh, they kind of guarded his innings. I saw four innings, 5 innings, 4 innings, 5 innings. No, it was really about the efficiency. He was throwing 90, 80, 90 pitches a lot of these times out there. So I think the secondary command kind of held him back a little bit. But the fastball, even at 92, 93, is comfortably above average because of the characteristics and the funk. The curveball plays up because of that downward angle that he can create. Then he mixes in a changeup that made a lot of progress last year and flashes average or a little bit better. I just don't know if I see enough bite or sharpness to the stuff. And I don't know if I see enough execution to feel confident in projecting him as a back end of the rotation arm.
Yeah, so he made 23 starts, 10 of which he didn't walk anybody. But he did walk 5 once. He walked 4 twice. He walked 3 twice. And when I see that arm swing, like, I'm with you. I can see the speed variance, and I'm sure the data can point to that as well. But I'm also like scratching my head. How did this guy walk fewer than 3 guys per 9? And I do think that is the sample as a whole talking, because it was clear when he wasn't synced up, that arm was just kind of going everywhere, and he wasn't landing anything where he needed it to. Now, he was really successful in high A. The results are there. The results speak for themselves. He's, 2.5 ERA.
Yeah, he was great.
I understand why a lot of, Tigers prospect people want to see him ranked a lot higher than this. But when you watch the pitcher and you see, okay, what could go wrong? When it goes wrong, it looks a lot worse than a lot of other guys that are higher on this list.
Yeah. And again, like it's the stuff is good. The fastball is definitely good,
but it's not as good as some other guys on this list.
He's not getting chased with the secondaries to the same degree. And I think as you get to the upper levels and guys start to spin on that even more. And I think that's also what happened at the end of the year as well. It's just these hitters said, okay, we know the fastball is going to land for a strike 70% of the time, and that's his best pitch, but everything else is sub 60% strike rate or right there at best. Let's make this guy locate his secondaries. And I think that resulted in a lot more walks for him and some struggles there. And I just don't know if there's enough chase there to be able to get the swings and misses and stuff like that if you're not consistently spotting and executing. So we'll see. But I mean, definitely a fun arm, and there's a lot to like there. And if he can tick up a little bit, I think that would help a ton too. But he ticked down at the end of the year, so just something to monitor. Yep. Hao-Yu Lee at 13 had a really nice year, but unfortunately, he couldn't fully fend off the narrative of the health because he has this great year, and then it's ended by lumbar spine inflammation. And that seems to just be what has held Lee back. I'll start with the positive, though. This was his best year, and it's not even close. 21 years old, and he destroyed AA pitching. I mean, He had a 141 WRC plus. It really is the injury side of things that probably held him back from being closer to the top 10, because it's just been every single year at this point. We're talking about a guy that's already kind of stretched thin at second base. Like, it's probably going to be fringy second base at best. And now you have all these injury issues, and it doesn't help his case. But in terms of the offensive ability, like, I think you can dream on above average power, like an average feel to hit. The approach is solid. He can be an offensive minded second baseman. What I really do like about him, though, is that he can solidify himself a big league role. I think the floor is a little bit higher because of how hard he hits the ball against lefties. He demolishes lefties. So I could see that short platoon side of things that could be beneficial. The challenge is it's mostly just second base. So the defensive limitations, he can't play first. He's think 5'8".
Yeah.
They've moved him at third a little bit, and that's tough. So it's kind of like short platoon second base / DH / bench, or he hits enough to kind of be that second division regular at second base, which I think he can do between the field of hit and power. But it's a tough read because he's got to really, really hit.
It's funny, like you can't dock him on a prospect list, but here we go again, like just another fringy defensive second baseman with the Detroit Tigers. I wonder if Keith can improve at third, and then it creates a platoon of Jung and Lee. I'm just thinking about the big league fit because they have a billion second basemen that are just fine there, and they can't play shortstop. But again, you can't dock him on a prospect list because of the organizational situation. And he was really good when he was on the field. And offensively, I'm with you. It was so far and away his best year. 851 OPS, 16 for 17 in the stolen base department, and double-digit homers in fewer than 90 games.
Yeah.
Like, it's well-rounded.
What's crazy is that was his career high in games in a single season.
Yeah, like it's not good when in 2022 you play 79 and then you play 75 and 23 and then you play 87 and 24. Like, let me see in 100. Let me see 3 digits in there.
Yep. Since the start of the 2023 season against left-handed pitching, 330, 408, 500 slash line.
Yeah.
That'll keep you around the big leagues for a while. You can have a job just doing that. But it's a lot harder.
Randall Grichuk $30 million.
Yeah, if you can do it to that degree. But Grichuk can play corner outfield, and that's where it becomes difficult for Lee. So we'll see how the defense can come along or where he fits in. Yep. I'm going to speaking of like just outlets, I think something that I noticed is a lot of people soured on Ty Madden. And I get it. A 6.98 ERA will do that at the AAA level. I'm not willing to fully jump ship on Ty Madden yet. I think he showed some decent things in his big league debut, but I think you look at the underlying stuff, it's good, man. Like we talked about it. I think he had the one start. There was a couple starts that were crazy, but the one start against Jacksonville where he punched out like 7 of the first 8 batters he faced, and then he ended up giving up 7 earned runs or something like that. Like that was just a story of Ty Madden's season. Fastball was down a tick and a half. That definitely hurt him a lot, but execution was the big part of it as well. He kept missing middle a lot. But this is a guy that has still, I mean, even at 94, which is what he averaged last year, that fastball is at least big league average. The slider's plus. The cutter is, I think, at least average. And the changeup should be at least average. So you look at that arsenal, it's at least a swingman type. With the command and execution hopefully coming along, he could grab a late rotation spot. This is just a big league arm one way or another, whether it's, shorter spurts out of the bullpen, multi-inning relief, or it's everything comes together enough to grab a late rotation spot. If he can regain a tick with that fastball again and get back to 95, then I think it's even more of a situation where you can see, him being that back end of the rotation starter. I just think there's too much talent here and the stuff is too good to fully jump ship and say, he's not really projecting as a consistent big league arm. I think he's going to be on the opening day roster. I obviously don't think he's going to be in the rotation, but he's definitely going to serve a nice role for the Tigers and help them do what they like to do with this chaos and having guys piggyback and go 3-4 innings or whatever it may be. Like, he's kind of the perfect guy to do that. And his slider really elevates the floor with big whiff numbers, 24% swinging strike rate this past year, even through the struggles.
As you were laying all that out, I went back to, I searched Madden in my texts, and I just went back to read everything that we were texting back and forth about Ty Madden this year. And the waffling is all time. Like, it was, Madden looks awesome. Wait, no, Madden looks terrible. And sometimes it was within starts. It was like that first inning from Madden was amazing. And I watched it firsthand. He made a start in Indianapolis. I want to pull this up so I know exactly which one it was. August 2nd in Indianapolis, 6 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs, 9 Ks, and no walks. He looked untouchable, unbelievable, until he wasn't. Then it was like, okay, you got to get Ty Madden out of the game.
Yep.
I don't know what it is. And like, I've seen him not make it out of the second inning at points too. Like, he frustrated me more this year than anybody since Simeon Woods Richardson in AAA.
Who figured it out? And my point there is not like, oh, this guy's supposed to be good and he isn't. It's, I know you're good. I see this. Like, you are good. Why do you have a 7 ERA? Like, it feels like starts are getting away.
And then he got to the big leagues and he didn't allow more than 3 runs in an outing.
Yeah.
Versus in AAA, this guy had outings where he allowed 8, 7, 7, 6, 6, 5, 5. Make it make sense.
The stuff is good. The execution is bad. And the fastball was down a tick, I think is the best explanation I can have there, where like when
I
the wheels start
to 98 and sometimes he got pillaged.
Yeah. Yeah. When the wheels started to fall off, they fell off. The Jacksonville line after he pitched at Indy is just hilarious to me. 5 2/3, 12 hits, 5 earned runs, 11 Ks.
Yeah,
That's
and how many walks? 1? He's
0.
He's around the strike zone. Yeah, he's around 0. The zone.
It's the craziest stat line. So like it's there though. Like you don't just strike out 11 guys by accident like that. Like this stuff is good. He struck out 8 or more, I think like 7 or 8 times last year. So I still think that there's a big league role here one way or another. Maybe it comes along enough to where he can grab a back into the rotation spot. But this is a guy that is going to give you innings and be a decent piece. And I think we'll continue to mature and turn into something. They're going to figure out the best way to deploy him one way or another. I think at some point in the next year or two, but I think he helps the Tigers as soon as this year, even if that's a 4 ZRA as a swingman, whatever it is. This is a big league arm, and I think he's only going to get better as he gets more time in the big leagues.
I think they have a whole bunch of options for guys that can throw 5 innings. Herter, Madden, Montero, Mize, they can all follow Bo Brisky.
And if Madden goes 1, okay, fastball's now 96, 97.
Yeah.
Everything plays up a little bit more, and he could be more effective in those spots too. So you can kind of use him as a Swiss Army knife. I actually like him in that role.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a recent draftee, an arm that I actually was really impressed by watching some of the amateur video and getting some of that data in a moment. Before that, a quick break. Number 11 is Owen Hall, right-hander, second-round pick in 2024. I don't know if you were able to get any video. No. I should have sent you some, because when I see like a clean and free and easy delivery, I just think, I got to send this to Jack. He'll love this. You'll love Owen Hall's delivery. He pieced up hitters in the area code games, and I think that really helped his stock. It's low 90s, but guess what he does? Vert machine, except he's a vert machine from like 5.7 release height. So this is where I'm really intrigued. He was getting 18, 19. It's run and ride too, but I love how free and easy it is. When we're talking about like Felix Arande, that kind of just free and easy delivery, it's like that, but even more like linear. And that's how he's able to get that ride. I wasn't able to get enough looks at the secondary, so that's why it's like really projecting out here just based on the arm action and the athleticism. I think the slider was the one pitch I was able to see a little bit more of. Looks like it can be good, but I think you can project a changeup to be average and a curveball to be average off of how easy and smooth and repeatable the delivery is. But at 6'3", 185, when you're getting that much run and ride, if he can grow into a little bit more velocity, I think that fastball could easily be plus or more. And, I think this is a projectable arm that showed a lot of really good things.
I'm going to trust Scott Harris whenever he takes a high school guy early. And I'm going to trust him with Rainer. I'm going to trust him with Owen Hall. I can trust him with a guy like Ethan Scheifelbein, who didn't make the names to watch, but I know, some people like. I'm just looking at the first 5 picks from each of Scott Harris's 2 drafts so far. This past year, Rainer, Hall, Scheifelbein, Josh Randall, and Michael Massey. And then you go to 2023 and you see what they did. And their first 5 picks were Clark, McGonigle, Max Anderson, Paul Wilson, Carson Rucker. He likes playing these games, like this math equation game. And Hall, if he factors into that and he's buying relatively low on a high school guy, then dude, sign me up for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, with the late ascension, like right before the draft, I think one of the last times that he really threw on like the national circuit, 3 innings, no runs, 2 walks, 7 Ks. I mean, just stuff like that. And then he averaged 94 in that outing. So like you're seeing a little bit more pops velocity wise too. Like if he's up to 94, like in hovering around that 93, 95 range, I think with those characteristics, he can dominate. So I'm excited to see what Hall is going to look like in his pro debut next year.
Yep.
Into the top 10, Troy Melton. We've talked about him. We don't have to spend as much time on Melton. I wanted to just still keep him in the top 10 because let me just describe it like this. The numbers weren't good, right? His fastball is 96 miles per hour with good characteristics. He then has a slider at 83, a changeup at 90, 89, 90, a cutter at 86, 87, and a taste-breaking curveball. All of those pitches generated average whiff or better. The fastball generated above average whiff. The changeup generated above average whiff. And the slider was slightly above average whiff-wise. So I could say they all generated slightly above average or better. A lot of hard contact on the fastball. And I think that's what really hurt him. It's like the Ty Madden thing, to be honest. It just feels like another Ty Madden who throws harder.
I was immediately going to say that. I was like, okay, Madden was frustration number 1 with the Tigers this year. Melton is probably frustration number 2 because you're watching it and you're saying, I know you're better than what your ERA is. Why? And you just laid out why.
Yep. The fastball just got drilled and it has good characteristics. I clicked every fastball that was hit over 95 miles per hour, just middle. It was wild. Or leverage count, like not at the top of the zone. Like it just situations like that. But this is another guy that, I mean, I'm looking at the game logs. He struck out at least 6 in more starts than he didn't. So like the swings and misses were there, but so were the runs and so were the home runs. The good news is if you have a home run propensity, it'd be great to be able to call Comerica home. Yes. But it's still something that you want to shore up. 6'4", 210 pounds, big body. I mean, you see an above average heater and at least average slider, cutter, changeup. Like it's going to come together enough for him to serve some sort of big league role. You imagine him in shorter spurts, that fastball ticks up to 97, 98, then it's really going to play. But it's another guy that just needs to get better with execution.
Yeah.
Number 9, Trey Sweeney. Who would have thought we'd be talking about Trey Sweeney, both as a Tiger and also in the Tiger system? Almost graduated, so no need to spend as much time. Of course, he was acquired in that Jack Flaherty deal. I can't fully figure out what his role looks like long term. And I'm curious what you think, because you're not going to put him out there against lefties. At least you shouldn't. I mean, they may need to this year because it's not like Javier Baez even hits lefties at all. He doesn't hit anything. So I don't really know what they would do. Maybe they find a short platoon at shortstop. I know we did the Playing GM episode on the Just Baseball show. You can go check that out. The one thing that came to me after we did that episode, and I know we laid it out with the Tigers in detail, a Paul DeYoung or something would be great. I think just spell the left-handed side and piece it together in the short term. I like Sweeney ultimately as a really I love utility guys that can play an above average shortstop, because then if your shortstop goes down, they're holding it down and doing it at a good level. The utility guys that are kind of stretched thin at the most important infield spot kind of takes away some of that value for me. But that's usually a lot of these utility guys. Trey Sweeney, there were people that were saying for a while, scouts were saying he's going to move off a short. He's going to move off a short. He's going to move off a short. He ain't moving off a short.
Right.
He is really good there. He has great actions. He moves his feet well. He has great instincts. The one knock is below average arm, but he gets the ball out as quick as anybody out there. So that helps him a ton. I think he's clearly an above average big league shortstop. So you have that mixed in there. He's been able to hit righties pretty well. And I think that was the encouraging aspect of it. But I guess the big question is just how much can you dream on offensively? It's a fringy hit tool. It's good raw power that I just don't think you can count on him getting into for more than 20 home runs. He's an above average runner, gives some value on the base paths there. But I don't know. I'm just like, what is there that I think points towards everyday shortstop? I just don't know if there is an everyday shortstop outlook there.
No, nothing there I feel like points to everyday shortstop, but I think they probably view that as this iteration of the Tigers being a bulk platoon shortstop, and then the finished product of the Detroit Tigers, once they, do end up DFAing Javier Baez, like their bench shortstop, their third middle infielder, and their utility guy that can play a good short like you're talking about. So I think that is probably the way to do it. I also, similar to Ty Madden, I just went back and I searched Sweeney in my texts, and the week-long revelation that he could be a decent shortstop is funny. to read through, and it's like, okay, here it is. And that happened after the Flaherty deal. He was hitting the ball really hard in AAA. Like his stint with Toledo after the trade was really good. And I feel like the end of last year was kind of him riding a hot hand. I'm very curious to see what it looks like in 2025 spring training, and then out of spring training to the start of the 2025 regular season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I still do kind of think this is a bench bat ultimately.
Probably.
And these ads are crazy. But like, I feel like the velos being there was very encouraging. 90th percentile, 105. That helps a ton. The approach being solid. He's walked consistently as a pro. That helps a bunch as well. But beyond that, I'm just like, I don't think there's enough offensive consistency with a fringy hit tool, struggles against lefties, all of those things. I think the best role for him is this high-end utility guy. But in the short term, I do think he can take the bulk platoon duties and hold it down for the Tigers this year. And then that's still a piece that you hold on to, and I think feel good about as a guy that can, be a roving above average bench piece for you, who provides value on the base paths as well, and a good glove at short.
DeYoung is the best option. The cheaper and more fun option is Tim Anderson to spell the left side of the platoon.
Yeah, just the defense, I'd imagine, has never been worse for Tim Anderson.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see. Who knows what he's been doing for the last year. I think DeYoung would be the best option there. But I know you want to see TA with one more gig. I know that would bring
just
you some
more.
joy.
Give me like 40 games.
It's got to be better than it was. I wonder if he's even going to get another shot. You think he gets one more shot?
Tigers. Yep. I have no idea, man. I have no clue.
8, Josue Briceno. We've talked about him so much that I don't think we need to talk about him much more here.
Why only 8? That's the question. Why only 8? Why not higher?
Are people you think that's gonna be the big pushback? Is like
probably because he hit 10 homers in the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah. We haven't seen him play more than we haven't seen him play above the low A level. He demolished in the Arizona Fall League. I love that, but I mean, probably gonna move off of the catching position. I don't know what the plan is. They haven't really made that public yet. Even if they do decide to keep him at catcher, I still think he's a guy that ultimately moves to first base. So that now puts a lot of pressure on the bat. That's fine. He's shown that he can potentially handle it. I think you can dream on plus power. But if I'm going to put a first base prospect, among these top 100 guys, because once we get to 7 upward, like it's pretty much either right on the brink or top 100 caliber guys. Like I just think you got to see a little bit more at the lower levels, because he's going to have to absolutely demolish baseballs. So I think from that lens, it was, I'm just like getting rid of that one. For those that are like wondering what's going on, I'm literally like,
I'm curious to know about the hard body thing. And in a chair at your age, how do I get fit sitting in a chair and not getting up?
We're screen sharing and just keep getting served the same shirtless, tatted up dude ad that I had to finally get that one out of there by
AI sucks.
Yeah,
AI is brutal.
It's just not good. They're not serving to the right people here. But there we go. Dog food. That's the right ad to serve. But with Briceno, man, like I can see it. And I think the second that he does it at high A next year for, a couple months, I think he's a top 100 prospect. But at this point, we don't have much to work with. We have the Arizona Fall League where he was amazing. And then, low A where he was good, but also really struggled to elevate. So I want to see him consistently elevate. I want to see him to be able to do that. And then I'm also curious what the defensive situation is with him, but assuming that he moves to first base, like going to have to really mash. And I think he can, but I think we got to see him do that a little bit more before we put him in that top 100 with some of these other guys.
Fair.
Ahead of him, Jace Jung, guy that's already at the big league level. Again, I think Briceno has higher upside than Jace Jung, but Briceno, right, has not really performed beyond low A because of injuries and also just youth and all that good stuff. And also Jace Jung, though he's not a great defender, at least can play second base, play a little third base. They're going to give him a lot of reps there. He's going to play some first base as well. Scott Harris said that he's going to have to win a job potentially, but they're also going to have him playing all over and getting reps all over. Like, at least that helps him a little bit. where Briceno, it's like, you got to destroy baseballs. And again, he can, but it's a lot more pressure there. Jace Jung is another player that I've really had a difficult time fully assessing because he elevates as much as anybody, backspins the ball really well, but the EVs you don't give him a huge margin for error. So he's got to keep backspinning and squaring up these baseballs. The defensive aspect of things, like, he's probably best at second base, and he's okay at third. It's not going to be a lot of value defensively. So it's a weird spot with him. I thought he showed well at the upper levels overall and did a lot of things well. But I think it's very clear with Jace Jung, he has to get into that power consistently, and you put him in a place where it is a little bit harder to do that. That does make it a little more difficult. But I think for him to, be an everyday big leaguer, the hit tool is going to be fringy. So he needs to hit 25 homers. And I think he can. He gets into it to the pull side really well, but the EVs are fine, right? He was a 35% hard hit rate last year. That's fine. But I think there needs to be a little bit more clear-cut power. It helps that he walks a ton, and the plate discipline is really good. I should probably actually bump that a little bit higher. I didn't update that side of it. The plate discipline is really good, and that helps him. But that he needs to probably lean more into the 3 true outcome thing and sell out for a little bit more power, I think, if he's going to ultimately be able to hold on to an everyday role. And I don't usually say that often.
Yeah, the plate discipline, I feel like, got better, or at least, the grade should be higher because of what he did in the big leagues, not what he did in AAA. Because, he was good, but he was exactly what we thought he was. He's going to draw his walks. He's going to get on base. He's going to elevate. He's going to celebrate occasionally with Toledo. And that's exactly what he did. And he was a good hitter in AAA. But, in the big leagues, his sample was impressive to me because it's not like it was that good power-wise. He didn't hit a homer in his first 94 big league plate appearances, but in 34 games, he walked 15 times.
Yeah.
Nobody's afraid of you when you get up there and you're not James Wood, or you're not Roman Anthony, or you're not Dylan Cruz. Jace Jung is not in that conversation. He's not a feared bat in the Tiger lineup just yet. So he gets up there and guys are willing to attack him. And the fact that he was ready to ring the towel drive all it's worth in every single plate appearance and walk 15 times in 34 games is impressive to me. And I feel like winning a job in spring training is going to look a little bit different than hitting 310 with a couple of homers.
No doubt. And that's, I think, just a oversight there. I think it's closer to plus plate discipline. The recognition of spin too, between the major league stint and the minor leagues last year, he only chased spin at a 16% clip. Sliders and curveballs only chased at a 16% clip.
And he talked a little about that at the end of the summer when we had him on the show.
Yep. Which, if you're able to do that, you're going to make that transition a little bit better. And that's where I want to see him just kind of sell out a little bit more for that power. And then if he can be that 3 true outcome guy, get on base at a good clip and hit 25 home runs, he can absolutely be an everyday player. And it would take some pressure off the hit tool. Cause I think it's a little bit more far-fetched for the hit tool to progress to average or better than for the power to fully unlock at above average.
Yeah.
Number 6 is probably a guy that jumped as much as anybody in this system. And another player that you and I have that might be the theme in this system for us is we've gone back and forth on him, and it's more about injuries and just availability because I don't think we've been able to get a clear shot to just see him play over a larger sample. Dillon Dingler. And I know that the numbers weren't great in his big league debut, but the numbers were fantastic in AAA. And defensively at catcher, man, he looks the part. Remember, this is an athlete. He played football, basketball. His dad was a collegiate football player, I think. He played center field his freshman year at Ohio State. This dude can absolutely do a lot of different things on the diamond. But the challenge was he was just hurt a lot. He dealt with a lot of different ailments and issues. Dingler, for him to ultimately settle in, I think it's that, he's not going to hit a ton for average. I think it's going to be a low 200s batting average. But if he can hit 20 to 25 home runs, which I think he clearly showed the ability to do so at AAA, and the EVs back that as well. I think it was an average exit velocity over 90 miles per hour. He elevates the ball with consistency. I think a ground ball rate in the mid 30% range. That's more than ample offense when you're going to be a plus defender. He is an elite blocker, I think, as he like fully settles in at the big league level. His framing and receiving has at least gotten to the average range, and he's got a plus arm, maybe plus. His transfer could be a little bit quicker, but he threw out, I believe it was like 25% of attempted base stealers as a pro. Excuse me. I am sorry, Dillon. 35% of attempted base stealers as a pro. That number dipped in his short pro or big league debut because of the transfer and just getting used to things, getting comfortable. But I think he's clearly going to be great in that regard. I see a plus defender behind the dish. If he's hitting 200 to 220, but he's hitting you 20 home runs and playing plus defense behind the dish, that's an everyday that's a primary catcher for a lot of teams. But what I love is the floor is so high as well, because he's also, I think, guaranteed going to give you that plus defense. He's at least going to be a mistake home run hitter, which means he can mix in 15, run into those hangers and fastballs over the middle, and still be solid for you. This guy's going to have a long career, barring health issues, just off of the defense and athleticism alone. He's also like a net positive on the base paths, which is rare from a catcher.
I love him. Like, you've known that I've loved him since 2021, but the dichotomy of him and Jake Rogers being the catching tandem in Detroit is awesome. And it's best of both worlds type stuff. And it's exactly what you want, where Rogers can teach Dingler how to handle his staff, but you also have a freaky athlete. So you don't need to retain Rogers longer than his competitive window in terms of offensive production lasts. A lot of those guys like Jake Rogers, they stick around a bit longer than what they'll be successful in, or the timeline that they'll be successful in, because you feel like that's such a valuable piece. But him hanging out behind Rogers for a while, could be 1 more year, could be 2 more years, and then taking over the everyday role. Like, I feel like this guy is in the right situation to be a good everyday catcher for the Detroit Tigers very soon.
And I'm dreaming on the Thayron Liranzo, Dillon Dingler combo. Yeah. They're going to complement each other beautifully, because Liranzo a little bit more to be desired defensively, but the offense is well-rounded and strong. Whereas you can split those guys up nicely, and Dingler will give him the defensive value to kind of hedge. If Liranzo comes up a little bit short in that regard, and then the consistent offense from both sides of the plate from Liranzo as a switch hitter, then you're plugging him at the DH spot. Like, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do different things for AJ Hinch, who I know used to joke about not being a big prospect guy. And now with this system and the way that it's trending, I love that interaction that he and Sky Harris had. It's like, I'm excited about these prospects now. Here's another example with Liranzo on the way and what Dingler can do. The last thing on Dingler that I'll say is 7% increase in contact rate. I think a big part of that was just getting healthy. I never thought that the hit tool was that bad. Ultimately, with the way he moves in the box, a little bit of length to the swing, I think he's just going to be that classic catcher with a longer swing who's going to strike out a lot, who's going to run into enough home runs. And as long as he can, connect enough to get into that 20 to 25 home run pop, this is a good primary catcher.
Yep.
We're going to get into the top 5, which starts with the aforementioned Thayron Liranzo. But before that, one more quick break. Okay, Thayron Liranzo, definitely a guy that we don't need to spend too much time on, because if you listen to this show, you have heard us talk about him a ton. If you just discovered our show on YouTube or whatever it may be because you search Tigers and you're a Tigers fan, I promise we'll talk more about him in the future. But also, you can look back at the Arizona Fall League episodes, all that stuff. Liranzo is one of the most common names brought up in those episodes. The one thing I'll say is obviously acquired in that trade for Jack Flaherty.
Yep.
And you got Trey Sweeney as well. Very close between him and Bryce Rainer. Like, very difficult to try to figure that out. But ultimately, I'm going to go with arguably the top prep shortstop in the class. Got to see what he can do. But defensive chops to stick there. We'll talk about Rainer in a moment. But Liranzo, he's 5 in the system because the system is good. Liranzo is one of the bigger climbers. We actually talked about him. Actually, another episode where you can hear more about Liranzo and the biggest climbers of our top 100 end of season update. So, I mean, what stood out is the defense coming along the way that it has, the fact that he has shored up both sides of the plate, like with his swing, and looks like he can progress now a little bit more of a well-rounded hitter. I think the fact that the defense at least looks like it can be average, and the power is clearly plus. Like, this guy is going to mash from both sides of the plate. Even if he strikes out at a 25% clip or whatever it may be, he walks a ton. I think that plate discipline's really, I got to update that too. I'm sorry. And that trend's closer to plus as we move forward. I think this is going to be another one of those 3 true outcome power guys. But if he's doing that while being a passable catcher, this is a fun bat. And I think he's going to be a good piece for a while.
And some of the physical tools that he has are, borderline unmatched in baseball at the catching position, in minor league baseball at least. Like, he hits the living crap out of the ball. And the fact that he's patient and ready to get his pitch and ready to, waste a couple or see a couple go by, or even, wait another plate appearance for him to get his pitch. I mean, he is not going to miss it. He will kill it. And that ball's going to get out of Comerica. It's going to get out of 29 other ballparks in Major League Baseball. And the arm, like, we were taken aback by the arm at the Arizona Fall League. He's clearly physically gifted. And I feel like he has the approach to kind of back that up and let the physical tools shine.
And I think the clear thing with him too, and I agree, the arm was crazy, and that kind of helps hedge some of the like transfer, slowness at times and some of the fundamentals that can get shored up a little bit more. But again, remember, he's a young catcher that is continuing to get used to all the things that come with the position. What I like about him as well is that, he made a tangible mechanical adjustment this year. And I did a whole thread on that as well that you can see on X, but a tangible mechanical adjustment that has allowed him to see the ball earlier, make more consistent contact, and also just, I think, have a more comfortable overall experience in the plate, where you could just see him consistently putting the same swing on balls, not looking as rushed. And that's why his chase rate dropped by a significant amount as the year progressed, especially after the trade. His contact rates jumped as the year progressed. He was hitting the ball at optimal angles as the year progressed. Like, I really saw him starting to lean into that walk at a high clip. Yeah, the hit tool might be fringy, but plus power and just be an absolute masher from both sides. And we saw that really shine through from both sides of the plate. Yeah. Not a ton to add on Bryce Rainer. We've talked about him a ton, out of the draft, but just as he fits into this system, my goodness, did they need a Bryce Rainer in this system? Dream scenario for the Tigers. We talk about the shortstop situation. They could have probably gotten a higher upside piece along with Liranzo for Flaherty, but they saw Trey Sweeney as an immediate need and a guy that actually could help him end up make that playoff push, and he did, just off the defense alone. But you look at the rest of the system, if Kevin McGonigle doesn't stick at shortstop, which, I think the odds could be stacked against him there, they don't really have anybody. So, like, Bryce Rainer was huge for them. Rainer looks like he can be at least an above average defensive shortstop. He looks like he has plus power potential. Another guy that the hit tool may be a work in progress, but he's also flashed really good plate discipline for his age. All that from the left side. This guy was an elite pitching prospect as well. Like, he's got a rocket for an arm. The tools are wild. I think you had to be over the moon if you're the Tigers to have him fall into your lap at 11th overall.
What made him better than Connor Griffin in your eyes? Because Griffin was the other prep bat that everybody loved.
Yeah, it's like splitting hairs. For me, I could see Bryce Rainer's swing. It was the mechanic side of things. I had more confidence in Bryce Rainer progressing as a hitter than Connor Griffin at this point. Connor Griffin, a freakier athlete, but it's not like Bryce Rainer ain't a good athlete either. So That's the side of it as well. Like, plus arm, really good defense still at shortstop. Connor Griffin could be elite athletically across the board, right? And you can play a good center field as well. But I have legitimate concerns about the hit tool. And I think the swing mechanically has to come along a little bit further than a Bryce Rainer does at this point. We'll see, though. It could all be moot the second these guys debut professionally. And that's why amateur scouting is nuts and so hard. But in that vacuum, like splitting hairs, Connor Griffin swings further off. And that was the only way I could really fully separate that.
Gotcha.
Anything else to add on him other than that? Like, thank goodness that they got him.
No, I mean, thank goodness that they got him. If there was a college shortstop in the vicinity, I would have done that because, like, the situation's actually dire. I don't even think it's borderline. I think it's full blown dire. Like, you've been sounding the alarms for a year and a half, 2 years now. But it is nice that they add a shortstop and a guy that is absolutely going to be a shortstop at the big league level to this farm.
No doubt. Number 3, I'm going to pose a question to you. Max Clark. And so we've got McGonigle over Clark. That's just a testament to McGonigle. Nothing to do with Clark's stock, really. But that's where I want to pose a question to you. Did Max Clark help or hurt his stock, or none of the above in the 2024 season?
I think he helped it. I think what he did is show you what the likely outcome of Clark is at the big league level. I think a lot of people were banking on this dream that he's this 5-tool player and it's the freakiest thing that you've ever seen. And then he struggled in 23 at the outset of his pro career. And we're sitting here saying, like, is he just a speed and defense guy? I think he's shown that he's somewhere in between that. And Max Clark, and A lot of it is brought onto himself because he is the viral superstar of minor league baseball. A lot of people are black and white on Clark. There's this gray area that's really good, and I think that he's going to fall into that really good gray area. It feels very similar to the rhetoric surrounding Jason Dominguez. Like Jason Dominguez was lauded as this generational talent when he wasn't a finished product, and then he was lauded as they're not lauded, and then he was labeled a bust when he wasn't a finished product.
He's still being labeled a bust.
Yeah, and now like he's probably going to be the opening day center fielder for the Yankees, and I think he's going to be really good, and I think he's going to be a fringe all-star at a certain point in his career, but it's not the Martian, and it's not bust. I think Clark is somewhere in between, and that's a good thing. So I do think that he helped.
I love that you bring that up. I think the most prevalent prospects, and a lot of times it's because of the organization. Yankees prospects, the second that they struggle a little bit, people are going to push back hard because I get it. Like there's a tendency in the industry that historically to overinflate some of the bigger market prospects. We've seen that happen because clicks are driven and things like that. So there's definitely this disdain, but also just there's a level of, in the Max Clark example, the more visible you are, the more you're going to field just these bold takes one way or another.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is right. And credit to him for building his brand, but just know like this is the other side of the sword.
And I don't think he cares, and I think he takes it in stride, which is the great part. If he was complaining about it and whatever, then we'd say
he puts it on his cleats.
Yeah, that's true. But again, he doesn't do anything else other than that. But I love that you bring up the point because Max Clark in a vacuum, I like him as a prospect, not because of the upside as much as the floor.
Yeah.
The floor is so high. He's a 70 potential, at least a 60 center fielder with a 70 arm who can run like the wind and at least has an average, I think will end up growing into an above average hit tool, and at least hits the ball with above average to average EVs. That's going to be a guy that has a long career. But for whatever reason, it was like this 6'1" kid was supposed to be this 5-tool freakazoid, like you said. And I get it because he is pound for pound a freak, but emphasis on pound for pound, like how much power can this guy reasonably provide? I think that those grades were always crazy to me, like plus power, like, yeah, relative to his maybe age and size. Sure. But how much more is he going to grow into? This guy is he's a work machine. Like he gets after it. He's already maxed out physically.
He's deadlifting 550, man. Yeah. Like you can't tell me that somebody that's 6'1", 195 is going to deadlift more than 550 and hit a ball, harder than he is right now.
He has worked his ass off.
Yeah.
Which is a testament to him. But like he's maxed out physically for the most part. He might grow into a little bit more power as he learns to use his lower half, a little bit drifty. But like, this is a really good player that has a high floor that I think ultimately is going to hit 20 home runs on the best years, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe in the best years. But I think he's going to make his living off of being a WAR accumulator in center field, hitting for average, and giving you a ton of doubles and triples. And that's a really damn good player. And I agree with you. I think he did help his stock by simply showing that is the floor. And if someone soured on him because he didn't flash enough of the plus power, I think it's more of a testament to your initial read on Max Clark than anything that Max Clark has done or not done.
It's those people regrettably not knowing ball. Unfortunately, it's them placing these unrealistic expectations on a 19-year-old kid in his first year of pro ball.
Absolutely. And just because he's popular on social media doesn't mean that he should have those expectations fully placed on him.
Exactly.
Number 2, I will get reckless with my expectations I'll place on him. Kevin McGonigle. I will say it again. I did throw this out on Amador a little bit in the past, and I might be eating crow for that one. This is the best pure hitter in the minor leagues right now. Yes or no?
Yes. Let me pull up the top 100. You wax poetic about McGonigle for a minute, and okay. I will throw you other people.
Can we incorporate plate discipline with pure hitter?
Yeah, sure.
In this regard, I see a 70 potential hit tool. I see 70 potential plate discipline. This guy's run a chase rate of 15% as a pro. He has run a contact rate of 88% as a pro in the zone north of 90%. He hits lefties. He hits pitches in all 4 quadrants. He hits pitches outside of the zone. I've seen him tomahawk balls. I've seen him hit balls that bounce, but honestly, he rarely swings at those because of the low chase rate. The question is how much power is there? Well, I don't care that much because I've talked about like the Daniel Murphy comp where he's just gonna, I think, could lead the league in doubles. But this guy snuck a 111 out to the pool side last year. That changed a lot. We're like, whoa, you got that in the tank? If he's flashing above average power to the pull side, and then also, and just for reference, like Gavin Lux, right? When we were just talking about him yesterday, the hardest hit ball Gavin Lux out of the upper levels was 111 miles per hour, and he's never topped that in the major leagues. Yeah. Obviously, Gavin Lux has not put it all together, but I'm talking about just the power ideas that we have. Sometimes we can get fooled about environment and things like that. McGonigle has had to hit in low A, and then which is the Florida State League, and then he's had to hit in cold weather. It wasn't as cold at the end of the year, but still, it's not a very hitter-friendly environment in high A out there with West Michigan. I really think McGonigle could grow into at least fringy power, which if you pair 70 hit and 60 to 70 plate discipline, I mean, that's going to be an absolute monster. I think if it all comes together for him, he could be one of the best bat to ball guys, one of the better bat to ball guys in the major leagues, and pair that with enough impact to spray doubles and mix in 10 to 15 home runs. This guy is an absolute monster. I think the only variable here that I think will adjust the ceiling from like, I think one of the top prospects in the game potentially in a year to, a solidly top 20 guy until he makes his debut is, can he stick it short and what does that look like?
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of think he's not going to. I think he's shown some things that make me feel like he could get by there.
Yeah.
And if he's good enough to get by there, that might be enough with the offensive ability that he has.
Yeah. 3 names I plucked, and you make the case for McGonigle, or you tell me, fair. I think this guy, it's pretty easy to put McGonigle over him, but Angel Hanao was a name that came to my mind.
Cleveland. Really good hitter. Give me McGonigle.
Yeah. The other 2 guys, Jacob Wilson with the A's.
Oh, yeah. I mean, McGonigle better approach.
Yeah.
Younger, but I guess if we're comparing like contact rates and stuff like that, I guess it would be Wilson.
Yeah.
But in terms of like projection and combining plate discipline, I would go McGonigle. But yeah, I guess bat to ball, give me Jacob Wilson, bat to ball wise.
The other name that came up in terms of pure hitter was Bazana.
Age wise, give me McGonigle in terms of pure hitter.
Bazana
hit the ball harder.
Yeah.
Harder. And, I think flashier, but I think McGonigle is a better hitter. I really do.
Wow.
Age, I think he's a high school guy. He's younger, and look at what he's doing. Low A, high A. So broke his handmate at the end of the year, cut his season short. That sucks, but at least he got it out of the way. He'll be 100% for the start of the season. Big question really is, does he stick it short? If he plays second base, he's an above average second baseman. And it's going to be that like offensive monster at second base that gives you a ton of doubles, enough homers, and I think can flirt with 300 if it all comes together. He's walked away twice as much as he struck out as a pro.
The Tigers don't need another second baseman, for the love of God. Please stick it short just for a little bit.
Which is why I think they got to find a way. I don't know what you do. You got to find a way to get this guy to be a passable short. But that's why, like, if he's slightly below average at short, a lot of times teams will move him off. I think this is a guy that you just see it through. And I think mechanically, he works so well low to the ground. His arm accuracy is good enough. He gets the ball out quick. He's instinctual. I think you just let him go. And again, if he's not a liability at short, that's fine.
Yeah.
Last but not least, the best pitching prospect in baseball, Jackson Jobe.
Yes.
His stock was not going to change. No. One of our favorite guests that we've had on here as well. Like what an awesome dude. What a smart pitching mind, and a guy that I will bet on any day of the week. It's a 70 fastball. It's a borderline 70 slider. It's a changeup that's flash plus, and it's a cutter that's above average. The only thing, the final piece, and Scott Harris just said this at the winter meetings, it's just execution. And he said he's going to be a mainstay in our rotation next year. It's a matter of whether it's opening day or a month or two into the season. And I think that's going to be dependent on how he executes in spring training. I think that's also, they're just trying to light a fire under and make him work for it a little bit more. He doesn't need that. I think that's clear if you listen to those episodes and those conversations that we had with him as recent as early in the season as he was working back from the hamstring. Execution is just the only thing, I think, holding him back from being an ace. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Throwing out the postseason appearances, because the postseason is a different beast. his 4 innings of Major League Baseball, opponents were 1 for 14 against him.
And he looks so comfortable with the moxie on the mound, dude. Like he has it.
He's got it, and he's got that swagger. Like, I think we're talking about Jobe in the American League and Skeens in the National League for a very, very long time.
And it really just comes down to, the changeup sometimes could get a little bit away from him. The fastball, locating it sometimes not always where he wanted it to be. He knows what he needs to do, though.
If he doesn't have his changeup on a given day, he's going to kill you with his fastball slider combo.
And the cutter. The cutter has come along too. He doubled the usage last year, and it was awesome.
He's fine. He needs 2 pitches to be awesome in a given day. And when he has 4, that's like the type of thing that you saw Skeens do in Chicago and Skeens do in Milwaukee. Like, he's going to throw 6 no-hit innings when he has all 4 pitches. But when he doesn't, when he has 2, he's going to give you 6 innings of 2-run ball.
And he's going to survive. And it just comes down to the command. And people were talking about the command. The command's always been great. He had one of the best strikeout to walk rates prior to last year.
Yeah, he was hurt.
He was coming off a hammy, and that's going to definitely affect the way you work down the mound. Last thing I wanted to mention, the changeup gets so much horizontal, and the slider obviously gets so much horizontal. He averaged more than 31 inches of horizontal separation between his slider and his changeup last year. To your point, if all 4 of those pitches are on, he's going to dominate at the highest level.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed this Tiger system update. We're going to continue to update systems or turn out a couple more new ones throughout this offseason. Goal is to be done with all of the updates like editorially by the middle of January. Again, you can follow along. I'm going to link the page that you can keep up to date with all of the top prospect lists that we've put out either already or will be putting out, so that you could just follow along. But of course, we will be doing an episode as we can when we put those out as well. Some fun stuff ahead. We're going to have a Rule 5 draft recap later in the week. I cannot wait for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of other stuff as well. Some more player interviews on the horizon as well. As always, thank you for listening. Look forward to talking prospects with you guys later this week.